So if you have hopefully that's all right with you. Otherwise, you can feel free to turn off your video. Otherwise, we'd be happy to see you. I'd like to introduce the Dean of Social Sciences, Dr. Brian McGraw, who will be presenting for you today. He is looking forward to getting to know you and hearing kind of what majors you're interested in and sharing more with you about his department. So take it away, Brian.
Yeah, great. If everybody would mind, I'd be curious to know, like, kind of where you're from and what area of the social sciences you're interested in, so I can make sure I can point to you certain things that you might be interested in. Yeah, just you can throw them up on chat. That'll be great. So I assume that you can all see my slideshow that's up there, my very exciting and an amazing PowerPoint slideshow. And I'm just going to run through that. It'll be about 15 minutes or so, no longer than that. And they'd be happy to take questions on particular majors. And I know that everybody kind of has something that they're really interested in, and some of the other majors are not. Maybe not so much of interest, but we'll get to something that I think will interest everybody, hopefully. So if we ask the question about why it is someone might want to come to Wheaton College to study in my division, right? And I've now been Dean of the Social Sciences for about a year, and I am also department chair for the Politics International Relations department. I think the sort of one of the answers comes from, comes from the college's own mission statement. So this is the mission statement, right? That the college serves Christ and advances his kingdom through excellence in liberal arts and graduate programs that educate the whole person to build the church and benefit society and worldwide. It's that last little bit that I'd like to just highlight. To the degree that indeed we want to be people, right? We want to be Christians who are discipled and shaped in such a way that we will work for God's kingdom and benefit both the church and society. Then the thing that the social sciences does is help you understand that society thing, right? That's what everybody in the social sciences does. They understand how economic, social, political institutions work, and how we might indeed improve them. That's what motivates people to study economics, political science, sociology, all of those kind of things. So that's what really makes us a great place to be, precisely because we want to be a place that helps students understand the world they live in, so they can go be service to it in the name of Christ. So let me just run through the different things that we have in the division. And I see that I have some people in anthropology, education, economics, business. So we have five departments: business economics, education, politics IR, sociology, anthropology, and urban studies. And those 5 majors have all together somewhere around 10 majors. It kind of depends on how you count the different education majors, right? Secondary ed is different than primary ed, which it kind of is. We also have 4 certificate programs. The certificate programs are a little bit different than a major. They cross disciplinary boundaries. And you sort of gather the classes as you go along, and they run alongside. You have a major, and then some students do these certificates to just add a little more to their educational experience and give them a little more of a credential. One I wanted to highlight here that's brand new, that'll be kicking off this next year, is the PPE certificate that brings together the 3 things it mentions: politics, philosophy, and economics. And with the goal of kind of a sort of training and encouraging students to do sort of the kind of public policy work that all 3 of those disciplines might figure into. And then finally, we have these centers, 4 different centers in the division. And I'll sort of highlight those as we go through, but note that the last center is actually a graduate center, humanitarian disaster leadership, but it actually has some connections to the undergraduate world, and I'll note that as we go through. So we got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of people to keep track of. So the Biz Econ department, it's our biggest department on campus. They've got something, I think, on the order of 400 majors. I've got a lot of great faculty in there. And there are two different majors: a business econ major, and there's a sort of just a straight up economics major. And they have slightly different focuses in the kind of classes they take. Where the business folks, they'll take more marketing and accounting and finance kind of classes, and the econ will be more sort of straight on econ. And I just want to sort of highlight one of our faculty members in that department, Hannah Stolz. So Dr. Stolz teaches marketing and supply chain management, which, never thought that supply chain management was that exciting of a topic until people couldn't get toilet paper these last few weeks. Right now, suddenly everybody's really interested in supply chain management. And Dr. Stolz actually just returned about 2 weeks ago from Indonesia, where she had been spending the spring semester as a Fulbright fellow in Jakarta. And she and her family had to come on back because of the COVID pandemic. And she runs, in addition to kind of her normal duties as a faculty member teaching, she runs one of our newer centers. I think it officially kicks off this summer, the Center for Faith and Innovation. And that center is actually a center that is meant to help students learn how to help businesses, right? In particular, sort of Christian businesses, how to sort of help solve thorny problems they might have with marketing or supply chains or whatnot. Indeed, one of the sort of the ways in which you might think about this is you can go off and find this article in the Texas Monthly about HEB. If any of you have lived in Texas, you might know the grocery store HEB. And they, unlike other stores, have not had supply problems, because back in January, they started realizing that something big was going on in China, and they needed to kind of dust off a pandemic plan they had. And they did, and they've done very well. And there's a great story in the Texas Monthly. You should go find it. Well, the Butt family that runs HEB, they're Christians, and it's precisely that kind of thing that the Center for Faith and Innovation will be kind of learning about and encouraging students to help other businesses, get better at that sort of thing. Obviously, lots of business economics majors go into business. You can see the sort of the range of things, but not just that, right? Some end up in graduate work, some end up in ministry, but the full range of businesses that go off and do really great things. Education, a couple of you I think noticed that you're interested in education. We have a great department. These are the 6 full-time faculty members that currently are there. They do the full range of primary and secondary education. You get done, you get licensed to be able to teach anywhere in the United States. Claire, I note here that you're interested in linguistics. So one of the great things about the program is we actually have a connection to we have a graduate program called Applied Linguistics. It does a lot of teaching for English as a second language. And you can get a teaching of English as a second language. I guess it's like a credential or a certificate that allows you to teach those classes. And we have students that go do their student teaching all over the world. I think depending on how the pandemic sort of goes, we might have as many as a half dozen or 10 students going overseas to do their student teaching next year. I wanted to note here sort of Dr. Boehm here, Thomas Boehm. He's been here about 4 years, and he has found funding for and created a Center on Faith and Disability. And this is actually a center designed to help both schools and churches learn how to integrate people with physical and mental disabilities into their churches and schools better, right? So that, historically, when I was growing up, kids with Downs or cerebral palsy or certain kinds of mental disabilities were usually, shunted off into special schools or special classrooms or special kinds of programs, and divided from the general population, as it were. And really, Dr. Boehm's sort of research, actually just sort of life ministry, is about helping schools and churches figure out how to integrate those people and minister to those people and be ministered by them. It's really he's doing some amazing work. And for students who have a kind of a heart for special education work, he's a fantastic person to come and study with. I think I'm really excited to see where that initiative goes. You can see here our alums go. We do a very good job of tracking our teaching alums. They get jobs. They get jobs teaching. They stay in teaching. They teach in a range of classes, and seem very sort of satisfied with their education training. We have one of the, I mean, according to kind of the way the Illinois State of Illinois rates things, we really do have one of the sort of the best education departments in the state, and we're thrilled with what they do. This is my department in politics and IR. You can see the range of faculty. We have two majors, as a political science and an international relations major. They have some overlap in terms of some basic classes they teach, but they kind of, they tend to sort of focus in either on American politics or political theory, the things that I teach, or international relations. And there they teach the full range of things like political economy and war and diplomacy, international development, all of that. If you go to the foxnews.com website this morning, you will see an article actually that Dr. Black and her friend Michael Ware wrote about churches, and their sort of, their encouragement to churches to think about their neighbors in thinking about the sort of the pandemic. Dr. Black does a lot of sort of public work on encouraging civility, sort of trying to help us think through how we might sort of learn to live within our distances. Dr. Taylor is an international relations professor who is, my joke is that you always know when he's teaching in the building because you can hear him, because he's so enthusiastic. He has so much energy. It's just kind of insane. But he teaches mostly international political economy. And one of the great things about Dr. Taylor is how much he encourages his students to sort of take the papers and the work they do in their class and try to get them published or try to get them presented at academic conferences and to get them out of just the kind of the classroom setting. So there's a big conference that happens every April here in Chicago called the Midwest Political Science Association meeting. And this year, we were supposed to have a dozen of his students that were going to present papers and posters at that conference, where they just took papers they'd written for him and turned them into research proposals. And that's a thing really for, in all of the departments, there are opportunities for people to do research with professors and to take the things that they're learning and kind of go beyond just writing that paper that you never think about again, and do something a little bit more with it. Obviously, our graduates go all over the place. We have one of our graduates is currently a clerk on the Supreme Court, helping write Supreme Court decisions. But there's a range of things that people go off and do. Sociology, anthropology. There were a couple people here, I think, sort of Meg, you were interested in anthropology, and someone else was interested in, if I can get my mouse to work here. Yeah, for anthropology and sociology, right? Oh, so yeah, Caden. So we do the full range of things. We have kind of a combined department here. Anthropology, they tend to focus on kind of cultural and social anthropology as their focus. Dr. Howell, Dr. Jeske, and Dr. Tooley is kind of, she's cross-listed both here and in a minute in urban studies, and she tends to sort of focus on urban anthropology. And then our other three faculty members here do the full range of issues on sociology. And really here, of course, you're thinking in terms of, both of these disciplines think a lot about, the kinds of conditions that affect the kinds of choices we might make, right? And particularly conditions as related to various kinds of economic or social inequalities, what makes people, because we know we're all not free choosers entirely, and so that's the sort of thing that they really focus on in particular. Dr. Miller is the chair of the department, and he does suburban sociology, right? So it's sort of funny. He grew up not far from here. Went to Notre Dame for his PhD, and studied the sociology of the suburbs, right? Why do we choose to kind of construct suburbs the way that we do? What makes sort of building codes work the way they do? How do suburbs deal with increasing ethnic diversity, and so on? He's sort of I always think about sociology as sort of being like, oh, about urban, but here it's about, well, that's about the world that, the place where Wheaton College sits in. Again, their graduates go all over the place. A lot of the anthropology students go off and do missions, and that's but they also do business and law and everything else under the sun. So my final department is urban studies. Dr. Tolley leads this, and the urban studies department, again, it's just what it says, right? I mean, they function about cities. Half the world's population now lives in cities, which is a huge shift from even just 100 years ago. And thinking about the ways in which cities work and don't work, as the case may be, is a big deal. I mean, I think one of the things we can see in the course of this pandemic is that it really matters what kind of leadership you have in your city or in your state on how you do. Dr. Lee is actually in theology as well as urban studies, and one of the programs they run, one of our kind of premier programs for the college, is Wheaton in Chicago, where students go down to Woodlawn, which is on the south side of Chicago, and live for a semester, take classes down there, do internships, and as well as they can kind of integrate themselves into that community and sort of learn through those experiences of, what is it like to live and work in a low-income community that looks very different than Wheaton. And usually there's somewhere between 15 and 20 students a semester that go down there. They take classes, anything from sort of a class in Chicago, urban studies, to art, writing for the city. Dr. Lee teaches a theology class down there. It's a great program. The little building you see is where the students live on that second floor. They have a set of apartments. Again, their graduates go on. Laurel was actually one of my advisees. She was a double major in urban studies and in political science, and she's actually the chief recruiter for teachers in the Chicago Public Schools, which is I think a pretty interesting job. We have one of our premier centers sort of crosses the departments in economics and political science, and that's the FPE, the Center for Faith, Politics, and Economics. This center sort of sponsors events on campus, provides resources for students to do research with faculty, subsidizes internships, and as you can sort of see from these two pictures on the right, takes trips around the world. So every other summer, they take students on an international study program to study the way in which politics and economics integrates within some particular set of economies. So 3 years ago, I helped lead a trip to Eastern Europe, to Poland, Czech Republic, the Baltics, and Germany, to look at sort of post-communist politics. Last summer, they went to Southeast Asia, so they were in Indonesia, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Singapore. And this next summer, the plan is to go to Scandinavia, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and maybe Finland, depending on how the trip works out. But it's a great experiential opportunity to understand kind of on the ground, how different societies sort of arrange politics and economics and how they fit together. And so then finally, I just wanted to mention this one institute, the Humanitarian Disaster Institute, which is led by Dr. Wheaton and Kent Annan. It's a graduate institute, right? So they offer a master's in humanitarian disaster leadership, right? So they're training people to go and help run things like Samaritan's Purse or Red Cross organizations, or whatever. But I just mentioned them because there are opportunities for undergraduates to do what's called an accelerated master's, where you get to your senior year and you start taking classes in the program, and then you just do 1 year after and you have a master's, and it's fantastic, right? I mean, if you scan through Christianity Today or other kind of Christian organizations, you will find their names out there, as they have been kind of front and center in helping churches and other Christian organizations think about how to respond to the pandemic. It's just a fantastic program. So questions. All right, so Caden asked, do you start taking major specific classes as a freshman, or do you take mostly gen ed for the first couple of years? Well, mostly what I think most people advise freshmen to do is to mix it up, Everybody has to take a first-year seminar their first semester. So that's a gen ed class. And generally, I advise my advisees to kind of have a balance, right, where you take a couple of gen ed classes, several classes that are sort of oriented to gen ed, and a couple of classes or one class to your major, and just sort of mix that up, especially the first 2 years. It's possible, especially, that you might think you want to major in something, and you might change your mind. So it's good to kind of start off like, okay, let me take an introductory class and see what I think about it, see what I think about that faculty member. But it's also important to kind of keep on track with the gen ed one. So most people sort of take those together. So Claire asked me about opportunities for undergraduate studies in linguistics and ESL instruction. Right. So as I said, the education department has, as part of the its program, has a connection to we have a graduate program in English as a second language. It's sort of applied linguistics is the name of the department, and you can sort of get a sort of education as second language kind of certificate, and there are also linguistics classes that they teach as well, and they're at the graduate level, but undergraduates can take them, right? It's just sort of, you have to kind of get a little bit of special permission. We don't have a full-on sort of linguistics major, but there are opportunities to kind of take some linguistics classes as part of ESL. Other questions people might have?
We got one from Lily.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Are there any documents that depict the average student's course load yearly over the 4 years as a business major?
So I do believe that the admissions and advising folks are developing what are called maps for people's sort of pathways through the different majors. And I do know that the business major already has one of those. So if you would, I will give her your name. So if you want to email Rachel Kroger, she is the administrator, the office coordinator for business economics. She will be happy to send you a document that shows kind of what people tend to take.
Following on from that, we've just opened a new advising office. So incoming students will have the chance to not only have advising from a faculty member, but we have this whole new office of full-time staff who are there to kind of guide you as to what you should take. And then going back to the general ed question, our Christ at the Core, our new kind of gen ed curriculum is very broad. So you might be taking a class that fulfills both a gen ed fulfillment for two different things, say, science and history, but it also is a class for your major. I mean, it's very creative. You'll always be able to find classes that are not just biology 101, but like science and faith, or there's lots of really, really cool options to cover those gen ed curriculum classes, which is really nice. I mean, I wish that was around when I was in college.
So one of the fun parts, I honestly think this is kind of crazy. One of the fun parts about the general education curriculum is you have a set of core classes, right? So you have your first year seminar, and then you have the 3 Bible theology classes: Old Testament, New Testament, Christian thought. And then you have what are called advanced integrative seminars. And these are classes you take your sophomore or junior year, or senior year, as the case may be, that are, they tend to focus on very particular kinds of questions, but the goal is to integrate the integrative part of it, right? Integrate theological and doctrinal ideas into trying to figure out how to answer those questions. So there's an advanced seminar on the Great Good Plague, right, which is about sort of pandemics. There's an advanced seminar that I've taught before on political science fiction, where we read science fiction for the politics of it. There's one of my colleagues in the department has an advanced seminar on cult politics, where we look at kind of the politics of cults in various ways. And so it's another friend of mine teaches one on Dante as philosophy, right? So it's a way of kind of really getting into sort of looking at a question in ways that are not super disciplinary specific, but are just sort of so much fun. Would you suggest so Stephanie, double major in CFM and secondary ed. I went to international schools and ministry. I like to teach a class, like a science or math class. I'm planning on doubling in secondary ed and physics, but the CFM program seems very helpful for what I like to do. That's a really interesting question. So I take it then the question of CFM. So CFM is Christian formation and ministry, for those that might not know. And that is a major that is prepare you for doing ministry. And so I suppose that if you're doing school, if you're teaching international Christian school, it might be worthwhile. So maybe here, let me give you a name of someone to sort of that would be helpful. So Paul Eglund is the department chair for education, and teaches actually a lot in the kind of the science education side of things, right? So he's sort of integrated into that, and he can kind of give you, I think, give you better advice than I could give you about what's the right mix of things to think about in terms of majors for what you want to do. So let me, I'll give you that. Dr. Eglund is, he's been here forever, so he'd be really good resource for that.
Caden had a question about just classroom setting. So do most social science classes end in a paper / project or in a test?
It really depends on the class, I would say. So a lot of the introductory classes will have a test, right? They tend to sort of end in exams. And then as you go up in the kind of upper levels, they tend to have more, they tend to sort of focus more on papers or finals. But again, it depends on the class. So Dr. McCoy in my department teaches a U.S. foreign policy class, and he ends up with it's a project, it's a paper sort of, but it's a policy memo that you're writing the Secretary of State, right? Dr. Stolz's marketing class, you're creating a marketing plan. Dr. Black's Congress class, I think you have to write a bill, and get it through Congress. Good luck with that. So that's kind of it. Really depends on the class, but most classes, as you get higher up in the rank, in the sort of the range, like 300 or 400 level, you're mostly writing papers or doing projects.
Does anybody have any final questions? We're of course always available to answer more if you come up with them later.
Let me give you my email here. And if any of you have any questions whatsoever, right? Feel free to shoot me a note. My daughter actually just decided, a couple weeks ago that she was going to come to Wheaton instead of a couple other places where she had offers, good scholarship offers. She's a good student, so I'm pretty excited, and I think part of her rationale really was that, she didn't quite put it this way because she's not quite the sports fan that I am, but the way she would put it is, she says, she felt like Wheaton just had a deeper bench. That a lot of schools have, one thing or this thing that they're particularly good at, but if you get there and decide, well, gosh, I don't, it's not exactly what I want to do. I want to do this. You might find yourself with a pretty thin set of offerings. And I think what really makes Wheaton kind of stand out is the fact that we are, and I'm bragging obviously, but I really genuinely think it's true. We are really good in a lot of places, right? That you're going to get a great education, no matter which department you land in. I feel very good about having my own daughter come, and I feel really excited about sort of the classes she's going to get to take. And she's not going to take my classes, by the way. So she's just, she's already decided that. But anyway, if you have any questions or whatever, feel free to get in touch. I'm happy to chat.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. McGraw, and thank you all for coming and joining us. If, like I said, if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to either Dr. McGraw specifically, or just send an email to admissions@wheaton.edu, and we'll make sure that your questions get answered. So thanks again for coming. Have a great rest of the day.